You're listening to the Three Angry Giant Fans and a Jet Fan podcast with your hosts Scott, Giant Mike, Cardone, and Jets fan Novak. Listen to us free on Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Little action happening in the past week. This episode is a Pet Peeve Palooza, a compilation of all of our favorite pet peeve segments over this past year. Enjoy.
So, pet peeves this week. I'll start with Novak.
Yeah, so my pet peeve is something I talked about a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned it, but not as a pet peeve, and then I did talk a little bit about it today, and that is the role of the sideline reporter and what it has become. And I'm going to give you two examples that I heard this week, and it's annoying the crap out of me. But so college and pro. College. So usually in college, these sideline reporters are like people at the beginning of their career. They're like 22, 23, and they feel the need to get their knowledge out in the 10 seconds they get with the coach as they're running off of the field, who run away from them like running away from a rabid dog. Like they're running away. Don't stop me.
Yes.
Then the sideline reporter grabs them, right? And he or she, usually she, candidly, is looking at it and she's going, your quarterback is 22 for 23 for 275 yards. He's got 2 touchdowns. He's got 3 receptions or 3, completions to a guy who's undrafted, walk-on from Kenosha, Wisconsin, who majors in anthropology. How is he playing today? And meanwhile, the coach is looking at her going, shut up and ask me the question already. So the coach is like, he's playing great. We'll see how he does in the second half. And he runs off. Back to you, Joe, or whatever. Then the NFL, I heard this in the Bills-Dolphins game, and this is not what she said, but it was along these lines, right? They go to Tracy Wolfson, I think it was. Jim's like, Tracy, report from the sideline after halftime. Jim, I spoke to, what's his name? Sean McDermott coming out of the halftime, and he told me that if he feels that if the Bills score more points than the Dolphins, that they have a very good chance of winning this game. But if the Dolphins come out in the second half and turn it around and they score more points than the Bills, that he thinks that they're going to win. Back to you, Jim. Thank you, Tracy, for that incredible journalism. I mean, it's not what she said, but it was like so mindless. These coaches aren't going to give these people anything. The sideline reporters are good for 2 things. One, update on injuries, which when Rodgers was injured, they wouldn't talk. They're good for injury reports, and they're good for like there's a dust up on the sideline or something. Like they're good for that. Other than that, shut up. Don't ask the coaches anything.
I saw one in the Georgia Auburn game where they stopped Kirby Smart coming in, and he's like, the reporter says, "What do you think about the terrible start that your team's having?" He looked there, he's like, "I don't think it's terrible. We're starting a little slow here, but we'll get it going."
Yeah. Is there any sideline reporter has got to be the most useless job in the world. Let's face it, it's there for eye candy. Novak alluded to it. I'll say it. It's there so they can put a hot chick on TV. That's what the sideline reporter is there for. And it just, you guys just nailed it. Just inane questions, talking to coaches who don't want to be talked to, and they're not gonna ever say anything. Was it an NFL or a college game this week where actually like midway through the second quarter they were talking to the coaches on the sideline?
It was the Giants game. They were talking to Pete Carroll right after a big play. They went to him.
That's getting. I hated the halftime thing. This is in the middle of the game. This is getting, another case of the NFL, because the NFL has to be telling the coaches, you have got to do this or there's a giant fine, because there's no other way they would flip and agree to it. There's no other way.
So you're saying the sideline reporters that flipped from a guy wearing isotoner gloves to eye candy in the last 20 years?
They're eye candy. They're there for injuries and weather, because for some reason you have to be on the sideline to talk about injuries and weather.
Do we really even need the eye candy? It's fine, but no. I'm watching anyway. You got me. I'm watching the game. I really don't even need it.
Yeah.
It's like when Jim Belushi in About Last Night, I'm going back to an 85 romantic rom-com. We're like, recreational fucking space. When you're walking around like with chicks walking around in like shorts and I don't need to see this at the ball field. Save that for like the strip club and the bar and the nightclubs, like recreational space. I'm at a sporting event. I don't need to see this. Keep worlds colliding. Kramer and Costanza. That's worlds colliding. Give me football When I want to see eye candy, I'll do that at a different time.
Yeah,
Jeez.
they had one good one, in my opinion, who did a great job, and she seemed very knowledgeable about sports. And apparently, younger and hotter came along, and they booted Pam Oliver out of there. That's
She
really,
was good.
she was
Yeah.
pretty good.
I think
Yeah.
Melissa Stark is decent, but then she
Yeah.
had to do this stupid Taylor Swift thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cardone, pet peeves.
Yeah, I was. There's so many, right, guys? I mean, we were talking about it. All you have to do is watch a couple hours on Sunday afternoon. But mine is usually I'm around the social media, but this one I'm going to pick coach contradicting themselves in post game press conferences, and I'm picking on our boy Ron Riverboat Rivera this week, who said, I was watching the end of that game. And again, this was before the Giants, season ended. So I was still thinking, I wasn't quite sure. I'm like, well, we're never going to catch the Eagles, because they're just a dominant team over us. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I want Washington to lose because I'm thinking playoff positioning still at that point. So it had nothing to do with what my pet peeve is here. But you guys know how I feel about coaches going for two. I absolutely despise it until you absolutely have to have it. So we all know that this game came down to a game-tying touchdown with no time on the clock. So Howell leads his team down the field and slowly but surely gets themselves into the red zone. They had 2 shots from inside the first and goal from the 10-yard line. 5 seconds left. They have to throw an incomplete pass. They have basically almost an untimed down. They get the touchdown. This is the one time I'm sitting there like, you know what? Riverboat, go for 2. Go for 2. You're on the road. That's a devastating touchdown to give up for the defense. So the Eagles, that's devastating right there. Go for the kill right there. Nope. Riverboat decides to go for the one time where I'm like the only asshole, like go for 2, go for 2, go for the win. Nope. He goes for 1. And the pet peeve is when he was asked about why he didn't go for 2, he was explaining to the media, well, we were gassed at that point. We were gassed. You were gassed. What the fuck are you talking about? Isn't it always the other way around when isn't the defense who's usually gassed at that point? Like you just scored with no time left. You have your hands around the team's throat to end the game on a 2-point conversion. And you're gassed? Okay, Mr. Rivera, if you're so gassed when you won the coin flip moments later, why the fuck didn't you kick off? Why'd you accept the ball? You trotted your offense right back out there, didn't you?
They were gassed.
So if you're fucking gassed, then hey, you know what, guys, you're gassed. I'm going to send my defense out there, get a 3 and out. We're going to get some rest. Then we're going to go down and win the game. Nope, you fucking we'll take the ball. We'll take it. Yeah. Why, Ron? Your offense is gassed, dude. That's what you just told me a minute ago. So what? How come that would be my follow-up question with my microphone? Well, wait a minute, Ron. Then why'd you take the ball 2 minutes later? Aren't they gassed? Asshole. So of course you're not going to win the game. 3 plays, 5 yards later, punt. Eagles come down, kick the game-winning field goal, game over. Asshole.
I can't really put my finger on anything Rivera's ever done in his career to earn the Riverboat Ron moniker, yet it gets trotted out all the time. He's never really done anything that outrageous.
No, it's lazy.
He's
so,
probably...
and also going for 2. So 1 play from the 2-yard line for a 2-point conversion? Like what do you do? This isn't a fucking 100-yard dash where you got to run the length of the field. It's a play from the 2-yard line. Are you out of your mind? That's your excuse? Like these coaches trot these comments out there, not realizing what an asshole you sound like. That's your reasoning? And the media just says, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's good, Ron. That's actually okay. Yeah, now I understand. Now I understand why you didn't go for 2. When you go for 2 though in the second quarter, and I have to the analytics told me to go for 2, so you're going for 2 all over up the yin yang. But when the game's on the line, on the road, a team that just gave up a devastating touchdown. Ooh, let's get the extra point. We're tired.
Maybe I can't call him Riverboat anymore. Right? I mean,
you would think
that
should have disqualified him. Riverboat Rod would have gone for that.
I said as soon as they decided to kick the extra, I said the game's over. They lost. As soon as he trotted out the extra point. So the game's over. They didn't even flip the coin yet. I'm like, game's over. Eagles got it.
I don't. In general, I don't mind a lot of coaches just going ahead and tying the game up there. But you are Riverboat Ron, baby.
That's your
You
name.
can't. I mean, there's no.
Well,
That's awesome.
really, again, Mike, my pet peeve was really it's. I was somewhat okay. It's what pissed me off is his reasoning for not going for it. That's
Yeah.
what really drove me crazy.
Yeah.
We were gassed. What are you talking about? When a team is trotting down the field, isn't it always the defense that is the one who's gassed when they're on their heels, backpedaling on like a turtle on its back, and the offense is coming trotting, matriculating down the field?
Yeah.
Especially when you score with no time left. That's
Yeah,
devastating. The Eagles
best
look
part about that-
devastated.
The best part about that, though, is that they did win the coin toss and then chose to receive, even though
Yeah.
they.
We almost
like
got
I
some
said,
gassed
they're like,
offense back out
Hey,
there.
we're so that they didn't ask. No one in the the guy who asked the question, why he didn't follow it up with that. Like, well, then why'd you take the ball?
Mike, pet peeve.
Yeah, I always hate following Cardone on these. That's really tough. That makes it really tough. I got a little bit of a pet peeve potpourri tonight because
Oh.
there's so many things that happened like this week. I don't even know where to start. I got so much going on, and it will all like be irrelevant by next week. So I'm gonna try to just hit the high points of it. So I went to the game in Carolina here on Sunday, which is why I missed a lot of the shit show. Had to get all caught up with what was going on around the NFL this week. But so of course I got. The first thing right off the bat, same thing, guys. We always have a pet peeve when we go to these games is the jersey selection. So I saw some buttes out there now. I saw a lot. There was way more Favres than I expected to see. Favre 4s in the Viking, So there's a
Favre
Panthers
4.
and Vikings. Yep. I will say though, I think this is the first Panther game because I always look for them because I'll remember one of the first Panther games I ever went to. The stadium was just adrift with what was that kicker they had?
John Casey.
John Casey
Oh,
jersey.
yeah.
Number 4.
So they must have a ton of these people. There must be in closets around here, just a ton of these number 4 Panther jerseys. So I always look for one. I've always seen one 100%. I did not see a John Casey this time. So we might be at the official end of the John Casey era. Kind of a more Mike type pet peeve. If you're sitting in the middle of the aisle, dude, you cannot buy beers single. You can't if you're a big drinker and you're not near the end, you got to get your buddies. You got to get 2-3. You can't. I had a guy. Oh my God, just drinking beer single and pounding them and getting up every time. Oh, sorry. Just like what? Come on, man. You got. I was like, let me go with you. I'll buy 2. You buy 2. You'll have 4. That should get us a quarter. Let's just. Oh my God, that guy would have killed him. So then the other one. This is sort of an individual one. This is the last of mine at the stadium. So there was a Viking fan behind me, and I could tell he was in this general direction behind me, right? Because he's like overdoing it, like boo, like we talked about last week when the Panthers are out there, and I'm looking back and I can't quite see where the guy is, and I'm looking for purple, and he's like everyone sucks, fire the coaches, and I can't see this guy's. So eventually, about the third quarter, I realized this is a Panther. He's got a Panther jersey on. He's one of these. We want to get a top 2 pick guys, right? So, yeah, that. Why are you at the game? By the way, you just had the number 1 pick in the draft. How many of these do you need to collect? Like, what's going on? But another one from my potpourri bag here is we talked about it. We brushed over it. It needs to be talked about a little more. The Giants' fucking attempt at the tush push.
Oh.
I mean, we did not to give that thing enough justice. I mean, so here's why it's a pet peeve. Thanks to the goddamn Giants, I can't criticize the Eagles for running the tush push anymore. I can't. I basically was calling it cheating. How are you able to push a quarterback? It's not fair. It's stupid. You can't do it. The Giants try it freaking once, get stopped, and lose 2 contributing offensive players while doing it.
That's
So
how pathetic we are.
that's how fucking pathetic we are. I gotta give credit to the Eagles and say, you guys do that all you want. All you want. I'm surprised Jones didn't get hurt on that play.
The Eagles are really good too, because when they could do the tush push and have 5 guys move before the ball snapped.
Well, that helps with the tush push when you're allowed to false start.
It's a legal play.
I mean,
admittedly,
It's
yeah,
legal.
yeah.
So
No,
go ahead,
I-
keep doing it.
I got a
hated
problem
it.
with the damn name. Why do we have to call
Yeah,
it a tush?
I don't
Push.
know.
That's
I
in the
can't believe-
NFL.
I can't believe I used it too. I used that damn name. I'm gross. I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I'm no better than Travis Kelce now with my vaccine commercials and my
Oh, jeez.
oh God. So and then my last one, you guys had a preview of this because I went off on a little bit of a rant while I was texting. Was the who was it who did the Monday night game who talked about Jones? Having, as soon as Jones fumbled, like the ball barely hit the ground, and the announcer's like, this is
Joe
the problem.
Buck.
Yeah, Joe Buck. He's like, it's the problem with this guy is these fumbles. I mean, he's got to secure the ball better. That's his 24th fumble of his career, and that's it. So it's a fact. He has fumbled 24 times in his career. He fumbled 17 times in his first 2 years. So since then, in 2.5 years, this dude has fumbled 7 times behind the worst offensive line in football. If you go through and look at any quarterback stats for the year, they fumble 3, 4, 5 times a year, some even more. I mean, you get that blindside hit, like that hit where he fumbled on. You're not holding on to that ball. Nobody is. There's no. It's just no way. It's immediate pressure. You're running to the right. The guy's coming from the other side. And so it's stat picking, and it always drives me crazy. I hate stat picking, and it is intentionally using a stat out of context. I know Joe Buck is not looking at books and coming up with those stats. He's got someone in his ear immediately going, that's Jones' 24th fumble in his career, and Buck is just farting it out there on TV. But that's intentionally meant. That's a stat they had on cue, just waiting for Jones to fumble so that they could use it. And I saw it again later in the post game. I think it was RG3 talking about, how terrible Jones is now. And now after that game, he has more career turnovers than touchdown passes. Well, you know who else does? A lot of people do. That is not Daniel Jones out there on an island doing that. And by the way, for Robert Griffin, right after games are over, to know that stat, that's the same thing. How many weeks have you been sitting on that, waiting for Jones to have 3 turnovers so the numbers would tip to your favor so you could use that stat? That's very pet peeve-ish, and it's bullshit. And thus concludes my pet peeve potpourri.
Right on.
Well done. They're all good.
Love it.
I
Awesome.
felt like that, Mike, because I was pissed off by 9:30 in the morning on Sunday. The London game had just started. I couldn't find it anywhere. It's on Disney Plus as a cartoon. I had so many pet peeves, and the Giants weren't even playing until the next day. So I should have known right then this was going to be just one of those weekends that it was just going to piss the hell out of me all around.
Yeah.
So one thing I did notice when I watched the Sunday games, and this was even before the Jets took the field, and I'm going to go on the officiating again, but the officiating in this league is at an all-time low. We are now at the point where it is just commonplace to miss illegal or false starts. So false starts are happening in every game, multiple times a game, and going uncalled. And I don't know, is this supposed to condition us as fans to go, hey, it's all right, it's all right. He'd start a little bit early. That's okay. That's fine. There was a mashup of 12 different snaps from the Eagles game against the Redskins. The Eagles' 2 tackles are taking a step back, and they're doing it like in a demonstrative motion, so it's very visible. They're doing it a half a snap or a half a tick before the snap. They're doing it multiple times a game. Why is this not called? Or is Sirianni saying, you know what? I don't mind if it's called once or twice. We're going to keep doing it.
They're not going to call it every time. No.
They showed one of the push tushes where literally not only does the center do the old squeeze the ball a little bit before snapping it, 5 guys fire out before the ball's ever snapped. That's a 4th and 1 play. It becomes 4th and 6. You probably have to punt then. I don't get why this is becoming allowed. And I'm picking on the Eagles here, but it's not just the Eagles. We saw it with the Chiefs opening night.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen it with Dallas over and over again. We see it around the league. It's just becoming more and more acceptable. We saw it with the Giants where the 49er kicker took a half step before the ball. And if it's so evident. Like, that's the thing. Your eye is looking at these guys standing still, and one guy that moves, you see it right away. So how is an official not seeing that? It's probably the easiest call to make in all of sports.
I think
I think it's two reasons. They're protecting the quarterbacks, and the offensive line play NFL wide is abysmal. And they're trying to give every opportunity to protect the quarterbacks and not have a sack on every single play. It didn't help you guys, but nonetheless, I honestly think that's what it is, Scott. I think that this is another way to protect the quarterback, because you, without mentioning names, said Dak Prescott, Pat Mahomes, and I forget the third one.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Coincidentally, those three, you noticed it, and you didn't put two and two together, but those are the three quarterbacks you mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, I know when Andrew Thomas left a beat early, they caught that right away in the game against Cardinals.
Yep.
Yep.
So, and I will say this, what has to happen, and this is not the pet peeve part, but this is just sort of me thinking out loud. What has to happen to actually turn the tide of this officiating nonsense where people just don't take it anymore? And worse yet, does the NFL even care? Do they even want to fix it? Or are they perfectly fine with the way it is, with the third down bailouts, with the artificial scoring, with allowing offenses to do whatever they want, but if a defender gets in the way of a receiver, it's an automatic flag. They have a very easy fix to this, and I've said it before. The very easy fix is to call something that is blatant and impacts the play, and basically let everything else go. The game flow would be so much better. You would reward teams and players for actually getting in the right position. I don't understand why as a fan base and as a coaching base and as a player base, people aren't going absolutely ape shit when a 3rd and 20 and a 3rd and 22 is called a defensive penalty that's ticky-tack and automatic first down. Guys, like I said before, you're not seeing it called out a Hail Mary. What is a 3rd and 20 and a 3rd and 22 if it's not a faux Hail Mary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scott, that's really good. You said something right at the beginning. Conditioning the fan to understand a new rule. And I compare it to, it doesn't matter if the clock's at 0, you get a beat after 0. Now, what is a beat? No one can define what a beat is to anybody. So it's arbitrary, right? So in other words, we call it when we flip and feel like we're going to call it. That's it, and we're getting there with false starts. I've heard people this week, and nobody official, but I've heard people say the NFL's not calling it anymore if the foot you're moving is still in the air when the ball is snapped. So in other words, they're letting tackles sort of take that half back step as long as they're not set again when the ball snapped. Now, okay, well, did someone let anyone but the Eagles know that? Because the Eagles clearly know it. The rest of the league doesn't seem to know it. So yeah, that's good stuff. And it's
really good.
You think about this. The NFL is the Jet game was so exposing to what the NFL is doing because of those two plays. Because you look at the two plays and you realize this. The NFL is very familiar and very comfortable with the concept of keeping the flag in your pocket at certain times during the game. Hence, not calling the holding on the Jet defender.
Yep.
So you don't call that hold because, come on, what are we going to do? Back them up another 10? It's already 3rd and 20. Come on. Mm-hmm. But yet on the same drive, on the same play, they throw a bailout flag on the offense. So if keeping that flag in your pocket applies to the offensive lineman holding, shouldn't it also apply to the defensive lineman or the defensive back doing virtually nothing to a receiver? No, it's like in the same play on the same drive, they contradict themselves. I've said on this podcast since the beginning, 3rd and 20, whether it's in the first quarter or the fourth quarter, that is NF or NHL overtime. There is no flag on 3rd and 20. There cannot be a flag on 3rd and 20. I even agree with saying I'm not calling anyone on offense for holding on 3rd and 20. I'm fine with that. 3rd and 20, you should have to murder somebody for that flag to come out. 3rd and 20 or more. But it's not what the NFL wants. And when they say things like you call everything the same, you don't, because you let the holding go. You call things right now to favor the offense, period.
Hey, guys, remember the days when if you had a personal foul as an offensive player, it was 1st and 25. Now
Yeah.
it's still 1st and 10. You're 15 yards back, but there's no penalty for 1st and 25. They don't want to put the offense in that hole to start off with.
Exactly.
Yeah. You remember back in the day, you guys, I think you remember this in Nick games when Jordan would get a tech. And then he'd be like, well, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen because they're never giving him a second. He can do any flipping thing he wants to do
Absolutely.
right now. You know?
So I don't remember him getting texts that often, but yeah.
No, he didn't. I mean, but when they did tee him up, you're like, oh my God. Oh,
or if he got to the 5th foul, same thing.
Yeah. He could do anything
Right.
he wanted. You know, the NFL's kind of starting to feel like that now because they come out, they make a big deal. This is number 7's first offense. You're never giving him a second. They don't even bother.
By the way, Gino didn't get a taunting penalty for going into the Giants huddle during a timeout, but yet he gets it for barking at the sideline a little bit later.
Yeah. I don't understand the application of that. I mean, I'm beginning to think, to Cardone's point earlier about Daniel Jones being a soft target, I'm beginning to think the Giants themselves are a soft target. How do we not get a call for getting punched in the face? How do we get offsetting penalties for doing nothing but getting punched in the face? How does Geno Smith get away with coming into our huddle, grabbing guys and screaming at them?
Screaming at them.
I mean, how do you not? I mean, that is the most obvious interpretation of these rules.
Well, but a guy that beats his chest after making a play is called for taunting.
Yeah. Or a guy, turning halfway around to look at who's following him during a long touchdown run.
I'll start with Mike.
Pass. I'll have one, but I don't want to go first.
All right, Novak.
I've got 2. One's a quick one. And has that pet peeve ever happened with a song?
Oh.
Don't think so.
I don't know.
I'm going to go with the song because this fucking commercial, if I hear it one more time, I'm going to kill myself. The BK have it your way, your rule is a pet peeve of mine. I'm over this thing. Can we stop with this commercial? It's on every day. Every game it's on. I'm tired of it. It's in my head. I can't get it out. I gotta put that out there.
Wait,
all right. So
for me, it's like the Costanza jingle, though. It's like sort of like it's annoying and irritating, but now I'm singing it in the shower. Remember Costanza, like by Menon? It's like by Menon, Costanza.
Burger King always comes up with these great promos. Remember when they did the king just staring outside the window, creeping?
Oh no, that was the worst.
So you always remember Burger King, and yet I have not been there in 10 years.
I haven't eaten Burger King probably more than that. I agree. Like, why is this on every 5 seconds? All right, so that was it. The other thing, okay, so has to do with the NFL, and I don't have a name for this. I usually try to have a name or a thing. I don't know what to call it, but it has to do with the officiating. And it is the tentacles of these penalties that I learn about every week that I had no idea existed. I watch a lot of football. I'd like to think I'm somewhat informed, but I learn something every week about a penalty, of a reason why it's a penalty, which I didn't know it was. And there are 2 reasons I'm going to give. One, in the Jets game, the Jets had the ball. They go back to pass. It's a clear defensive offsides or whatever. And so free play, right? So I'm thinking free play. Great. Zach Wilson drops back. He does what he should do. He finds Garrett Wilson over cross throw over the middle. He's going for a touchdown. And Alan Lazard goes shoulder first into Blankenship for the Eagles with a incredible block, like a textbook fucking block. And I'm thinking that was the best block I've ever seen. Flag. Defenseless something. He had to, no, the thing was, as they said, he had to lead with his hands. What? When was that a thing? You had to lead with your hands on a block. They are going full speed. Do you want these guys to break their arms?
Snapping arms.
What are you supposed to do? He didn't lead with his head. He turned his head down, led with his shoulder, straight on, and it wasn't like it was a blindside block. The guy was staring right at him as he's coming at him.
He saw him
supposed to,
at the last minute.
Yeah, he saw him.
Yeah.
And you have to lead with your hands. Didn't know that was a thing at all. Never heard that piece of that rule at all. And then of course on the Hertz, the one we talked about earlier, where he got in the he fumbled the ball clearly and fumbled it into the end zone. But here's like a little thing on that rule. The player on the same team can't recover it in the end zone, but the defensive team gets it on the 1. But yet if they fumble it out of the end zone, the other team gets it on the 20. Why? Why is that? Like, what's the difference? Someone explain to me how. There's no
can't.
rationale. It's like the English language. Well, it's I before E except after C, except on these 3 words. What? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand why there are so many different little variations of all these flags and rules that I've never heard of. That's my pet peeve.
I don't know how the officials even keep up with what how fast this game occurs in real time. How the fuck do they even manage to come out with these rules and hands? The guy's got to get his hands up. You're right though, Novak. I hadn't heard. None of us have heard that, right? He's got to. So when was this invented, or when was this created? That you got to get your hands up. Wait, how? What are you talking about?
I mean, soon enough, these officials are going to have like a book on their like strapped to their
Yeah.
side. They're going to like, let me check this out. Page 62, rule 13.5, and they're going to have to read it out because how can you remember all this?
Look, I mean, and here's where I have a problem here is we've made everything so complicated. We've said on the pod a couple of times, simplify things for the officials. Don't make it more difficult. Think about illegal man downfield now. They say anyone past 1 yard past the line of scrimmage on a passing play is downfield. You see play after play, the Chiefs, the Eagles, multiple guys are downfield past a yard, sometimes 5 yards downfield and no flag. So when you choose to throw the flags on plays like that, it appears that there's bias because you've picked and choose when you're going to throw the flag when you could have done it almost all game long. And I'm not even going to pick on illegal man downfield. The inconsistencies the NFL has is because they've made everything so complicated. We've said just call egregious fouls, call things that impact the play. If a receiver gets knocked down on the other side of the field because he's dragged down, call that defensive holding. If he's impeded slightly on the other side of the field and the ball doesn't go there, don't throw a flag. Things that impact the play, a holding at the point of attack, call it. Don't call something on the opposite side of the field that has no impact. And that's what made me most mad about that Evan Neal play. Is Evan Neal's blocking a guy, which is supposedly legal if he takes you past a yard.
If you're
I don't even know if he
up,
actually took him past a yard.
If you're engaged with the guy, right?
I know that from high school.
Even if
you're
he did,
blowing
what
someone
impact,
up, you can block them 50 yards downfield.
Yeah, and even if he did, what impact did that have on the final outcome of the play?
Nothing.
Zero.
Nothing.
And there's rules on like the pocket. A pocket is an imaginary line. Like it's only shown on TV, but like you've got to like watch the quarterback. Oh, he's 1 foot out of the pocket, so that's not intentional ground. Like what? I'm sorry, like it doesn't make sense to me. How are these players supposed to know what the pocket is?
Yeah, that's a great one. That is a great one. And this sort of, I mean, that I was going to say sort of, that actually was my pet peeve, a little bit of a different take than that. And it's just how another piece of evidence that the officiating is just out of control is the lengths they're now going to make a bad call a good one. And I think that's, Scott was all over that. So I'll have another pet peeve, but yeah, I mean, we've talked about it just here in the last couple of weeks that, you're allowed to false start now in certain situations, apparently. Scott mentioned how, what's his name? The official in the booth at the Giants game was like just making up rules to make that not pass interference. It's different. The ball's in the air. No, it's never different. If you're grabbing a guy by the jersey, from the line of scrimmage to the back of the end zone, that's bad. Everyone knows. The officiating is so bad that it's almost like it's piling on at this point. And a lot of it gets swept under the rug because a majority of it is so egregious and so bad that regular bad calls are just being forgotten.
Yeah.
I thought of this while I was watching the end of the Giants game is, you ever notice, oh boy, that was a real, what's his name? Paul Harvey. You ever notice that these huge calls, these defensive holdings, these other calls, they don't call them when the game's not on the line. They're huge, impactful calls every time they're called. It's very rare that one of those calls happens that fans just forget about it by the end of the game. It's a gigantic call. Every time they do it, you got to take that power away from the refs. You have to.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to continue with this theme for my pet peeve because it's not going anywhere. The power is with the officials. It's interfering with the outcome of just about every damn game. My particular pet peeve was on a specific play that occurred in the San Francisco Cleveland game, where San Francisco. I just had to do a little bit of math here too as I'm coming around here. So San Francisco's clinging to a 1-point lead late in the fourth quarter. Cleveland has the ball. They got a 3rd and 10 at their own 26. So PJ Walker is in for an injured Deshaun Watson, right? So he throws a short slant to the receiver Moore. I don't know if it's even his first name. Doesn't matter.
Elijah, former Jet.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So if you saw the play, he throws a shitty ball where Moore has to stretch out. So now he's become, I'm doing air quotes here. He now, because of a shitty pass, if he hits him in the fucking chest, it's just a completed slant. But because he throws the ball so poorly, where Moore now has to outstretch his body, Gibson, the defensive back, comes up and makes a perfect stick with the shoulder. Novak is exactly what you're talking about with Lazard. Same kind of thing. If everyone saw the play. And you saw it live where it was a bang play, but they come in with here we go with the officiating. The guy comes in, he's defenseless at this point. So they call it the 15-yard roughing call. It's not unnecessary roughness, or it's not. They go hitting a defenseless receiver. He's not fucking defenseless. Walking down the street and getting attacked and mugged by fucking some guys down to going to your car in a fucking unlit parking garage. That's fucking defenseless. A guy. A receiver on an NFL football field where he has to catch a shitty thrown ball by his quarterback, stretched out, wearing a fucking helmet, shoulder pads, a cup, jock strap, the whole fucking thing. He's not defenseless. It's part of his occupation to go across the middle. He didn't hit him in the head. It's the same thing. Didn't lunge with it. Didn't hit him in the head. Didn't lunge. It was a textbook shoulder. Remember, we used to always hear separate the man from the ball. So what pisses me, everything pisses me off about that call. And I really didn't care. I wanted the Browns to actually win the game. I just wanted the Niners to lose, NFC, AFC, whatever. Just the whole. So but as soon as I see a call like that, I flip the switch and say, fuck this. I want San Francisco to win this game now because they just got screwed on a bad call. That would have made it 4th and 10 on their own 26. I didn't have a lot of confidence in Cleveland keeping that drive alive with that after that call. So, of course, the drive continues. Cleveland goes down. They got another penalty, they got a defensive holding call later in the drive after Cleveland crossed the 50. They go on to kick a field goal. Now, San Francisco missed a makeable field goal to win the game. I think it was a 41-yarder by what's his name on San Francisco. But the Cleveland goes on to win that game. Guys, it's just bullshit because that drive was kept alive by a bullshit call at a critical moment that would have been going from a 3rd to a 4th down play. It's just wrong. And what pisses me off is that if he catches that and he gets blown up, well, then it's called unnecessary roughness. But because it was a shitty throw, the quarterback now is getting rewarded for that because he made his receiver defenseless according to the rules. He was make a better throw, dude. Because here's the thing: if he actually makes a better throw, the Niners are better off just tackling the guy. Just without having to hit what you call a defenseless receiver. I can't stand this term defenseless. This is the National Football League. These guys are wearing pads. That's the whole. And he hit him with his shoulder. I'll give you the penalty if the guy launches his helmet to helmet. I have no problem with that, calling that unnecessary roughness there. But when you make a textbook tackle, everything that Gibson did on that play was perfect. What the fuck are these defensive backs supposed to do, or anybody on the defense for that matter, when they're trying to just play defense in the NFL? Like you said, Mike, I'm not just a bitter Giant fan. I am a bitter, angry NFL fan with the way these games are officiated, the Hollywood stuff, the Taylor Swift stuff. That doesn't even matter. We didn't even have to talk about that tonight. I'm just bitter, guys, watching this sport. I watch it just to be annoyed, and it's gotten bad. I'm really at that point where it's just I watch it literally for the entertainment value of our podcast here. That's one part I love for the week, to do this. Thank God we have this show, because it's therapy and venting session for me. It really is.
My question to you would be, like, you made such a great point. What's the opposite? What's a defensible receiver? He's aware. He has set himself. He has said, defender, you are coming. I see you coming. I am now defensible. Now you may hit
prepared.
me. I am prepared.
Right.
What is the opposite of defenseless? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
After you catch the ball, do you have to give permission? Like, okay, I'm eligible now, like an eligible receiver. I'm an eligible guy to be tackled here. You got to notify the officials.
You got to sign a waiver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This sort of goes back.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, this sort of goes back to the discussion we were having a little bit ago about interpretation and inconsistency, because the whole reason the defenseless receiver was put in play is because guys were getting violently hit over the middle when they were jumping up to catch a ball in midair. You're getting legs taken out. You're getting speared. Back when, leading with the helmet was fine. That's what it meant. Then it somehow morphed into any hard hit now on a receiver is called defenseless receiver.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm going to tie this back to the play of Hurts at the end zone getting a touchdown. Just like replay used to be, if it wasn't conclusive, it was not overturned. And they always said, "Oh, that's inconclusive. You might be able to say that the ball crossed the line, but you can't see the ball cross the line there." Somehow replay went away from the term conclusive to just, we're going to let the play stand.
Yeah, that looked good.
Yeah.
I agree with, if you lead with your head and you hit someone else in the head, 100. I agree with that. That is aggressive. That is all of that. I can live with that. But if you lead with your shoulder, which is how you've been taught for 25 freaking years, however long they've been playing, that should not be defenseless or a penalty.
And what to go and bringing this thing back full circle to Cardone's first comments of the night. What is less reviewable than that? Exactly. Did he lead with his helmet or not? I mean, is there anything more black and white than that?
Nothing.
Why doesn't the NFL just go to the college system of replay?
Yep.
You don't have to challenge. The booth goes to New York. New York says, "Hey, that's a clear hit with the shoulder, not targeting, not defenseless receiver, nothing."
The only stupid part of that rule is in college, it's still a penalty. That review is just to see whether or not the player gets thrown out of the game.
Well, I've seen them actually. I've seen them undo a targeting call altogether.
Oh, can they do that? Maybe they changed that. I know at one point that was the rule. Yeah, all you have to do to look at this is remember, guys, the 80s and even 90s, like you had to be a man to go over the middle of the field in an NFL game. You had to be a grown ass man. That was tight ends. That was your Terrell Owens.
Oh yeah.
Now, guys, you got Kadarius Toney's running around in there, and they feel perfectly safe.
Yep. Guys, I want to make one more point on that Cleveland game. So, speaking about the officials again, the combined, there were 25 accepted penalties for 224 penalty yards in that Cleveland-San Francisco game. 25 penalties. Again, that's not counting the ones that are declined and all the other bullshit or whatever. So, 25 fucking penalties, 224 yards. 12 on the Niners, 13 on Cleveland as far as the penalties. Is that not? I got to start looking at this closely because I don't know what's the average number of penalties per team per game. I don't know. I know it's not 13, but that's 25 penalties in one game. It's like an NBA game.
If you watch the Ravens-Titans game, which here was much later than there, I think it was like a 3:00 game here in Germany, but that game. It just seemed like every drive there were multiple penalties. There were at least 5 third-down bailout calls. There were defensive holdings, illegal contacts, all of these plays. And a matter of fact, a Raven did get ejected for the game because he violently hit someone with the helmet to helmet. that's a textbook ejection, a textbook penalty. That's
Yep.
what should be called. And you know what? They actually reviewed that to see if he should be ejected. So don't tell me they don't take looks at things, because they do, but they do it selectively.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of helmet to helmet hitting going on in the NFL. It does not get called. It's very selective.
And yet Bobby O'Kirky gets a roughing penalty on Josh Allen.
See, if that's one to me again. Just because you threw the flag doesn't mean it has to be a penalty. That is so reviewable. If you look at that, if a ref looked at that, he'd be like, okay, I had a bad angle, looked like he led with the head, we're picking that up. Just seems doable.
My pet peeve, so you guys danced all over them. So, I mean, I'm not even going to go through the one I had on officiating, because I think we've covered it. But I don't know if you saw the Chargers Dallas game. And first off, they had this camera angle on this woman and looked like a brand new Chargers jersey. So excited down here like this. And then the Chargers score. They show her jumping around like an idiot. First off, like the backdrop of it looked like she was in like a green room or something for a Hollywood scene. It turns out she rents a cabana for some games. So you can rent a cabana in San Diego. But you can't tell me that the NFL did not plant this woman in to show that there's Charger fans, because a couple days later, the internet tells all, and it showed her like 5-6 years ago in a Vikings jersey doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
She's a plant fan.
Plant fan.
And I swear to God, when they were down at the goal line, I thought she was going, get him, which would be counteractive, since the Chargers were the ones that were trying to score and eventually
Don't
did
get
score.
Don't get him. That's awesome, Scott. You know what I noticed?
Great.
I noticed during that game that they were doing very tight close-up groups of Charger fan shots. They just really like zoomed in, because I remember I actually got tricked by it. Because I looked at it and I went, okay, where's the Dallas fan? There's no Dallas fan in the picture. I was like, wow, that happened like 2 or 3 times before. I'm like, I'm being fucking fucked with right now.
Bamboozled.
There's no way that this place is not crawling with Dallas fans. It's impossible that that's the case. But then I think, like I often do, like, why would they do that? And then I go, oh, the ESPN like office is in that stadium now. and they mentioned it at least 5 times that I heard during that game about the fan experience is the best in the NFL at this stadium. They are trying to sell this stadium.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I think
bamboozled.
I think the Chargers had to take a timeout in that game because crowd noise,
yes,
and it was for Dallas.
They had to take a timeout for crowd noise.
Think about how it's changed, Scott. There's a great one, because you called out a fake fan in a fake room, when 20 years ago it was the fat guy with the letters, like naked, like with his big giant stomach, there. That was with a beer in his hand. That was an NFL fan. Now we've got this woman who's not even a real fan in a green room.
To Mike's point, the shot was so crisp. It looked like the backdrop was like this silver line. It wasn't like you were in stands, and I didn't even know you could have cabanas at a football game. So that's new to me. But the fact that they had such a close up on her and we're watching her, you can't tell me she was a player. Like which camera guy is like, hey, pan up to that room. There's a crazy lady up there.
No, it was probably filmed 3 days ago, Scott, in an empty stadium. Roll the fan. Roll the fan footage. Roll the fan.
Hilarious.
That is great.
So we got some questions this week.
Time out. I just passed. I didn't surrender. Yeah. I don't want Lowe getting on me.
We don't want Lowe getting upset.
I tried to give you a shot. You always say you don't want to go after Cardone, so I was trying to give you a shot to lead.
No, I'll be really quick with mine. Again, I think we all had the same idea tonight for a pet peeve, right? So I kind of scrambled a little bit, but I know I can always fill time updating everyone on Justin Fields. So that is what I plan to do with my time this week. So we had some action in the Justin. By the way, he sucks again. Everyone knows he back to sucking. Yeah, that was going to ruin my life if he wasn't. But so let me read you a little quick thing here, and this will be my interpretation of why his running doesn't matter. This is a drive. Actually, it's the first drive of the game by the Bears. So first kickoff, Bears have the ball first. Justin Fields sacked. Right, first play, so that puts him in second and 17 or something. And then two next plays, there are no called quarterback run. He's just running for his life. He manages to get a first down, so he puts him in the hole and he gets him out. So that's not bad. So then the Bears are like, well, hell, we're not going to throw on first down again. This guy sucks. So they try to run it -5 on the run because you don't have to defend the pass when you're playing the Bears at all. You don't.
No.
So -5 for the first run. Next play, Justin Fields sacked. Next play, Justin Fields incomplete short right. And then punt. That's a Bears possession. That is a 8-play drive for, if my math is right, 3 yards. That's what that.
Yep.
That's what that amounts to. But anyway, the big news from Justin Fields in this game was he got hurt in this game. I don't know if you guys realize that, which I don't know whether to congratulate or say sorry to Bears fans for that, but he got hurt with about 10 minutes left in the game. And his backup, which, as we talked about earlier in the year, can't be someone that you've ever heard of before, because if he was, they'd be clamoring for him to be playing. So it's a guy named Tyson Bagent.
But
So
Yes.
So Bagent, is that what it is?
Shepherd University.
So he comes in off the bench to spell Mr. Fields. And so this is their stat lines. Okay. So Justin Fields in a half plus 5 minutes was 6 of 10 for 58 yards with 3 first downs. Where is it here? He was sacked 4 times. Yeah, that's Fields. So that's a very typical Fields stat line there.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interception in there somewhere. Tyson Bagent comes in for almost half the game, just a little bit less time than Justin had. He goes 10 of 14 for 83 yards. And he also has, he was sacked only once, not 4 times. So in other words, no visible difference between Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent.
And he even tried to mimic Fields by losing a fumble that was returned for a touchdown at the end of the game.
Mimic him.
Yes. He said this works for Justin. He seems to get on the cover of Sports Illustrated with this play. I'm gonna try it out. So yeah, that's the state of the Bears and our good friend Justin Fields. And depending on what type of Bears fan you are out there listening, I hope for your sake he's either back or not back next week. I bet it'll be one of them.
So
I love
All right,
Fields
let's
update.
move to pet peeves. I'm going to start with Cardone on this one. Mike didn't want to go first last time, so I'll go with
Of
Cardone.
course you go somewhere else. I'm prepared this week. Yeah.
No, fuck
Oh,
you.
very good. No, that's all right. I'll go. I have mine's real short actually. I didn't have a real intense one this week. I'll be honest, guys. So it's a small 2-parter. So the first part of it was kind of a segue into the actual pet peeve, I guess. But I've mentioned this. We've mentioned this many times on the pod before as a pet peeve, where when we have the odd baseball score in a football game, a la the 5-3 with the safety. We all know, we've heard this one a million times. So the other night, I enjoy watching the Major League Baseball playoffs, and I was watching the Texas Ranger Houston Astro game. I think it was Game 6. What doesn't matter. And at one point, Texas they were putting it to the Astros. They were up 10-3 at one point late in the game. So sure enough, I was thinking, don't do it. This guy might do it. So sure, at the end of after the inning break, we got a football score here in Houston. I'm like, God damn it, there it is. And I'm like, no, we don't actually. I was barking in my living room here thinking like, no, not really, dude. When you think about it, because with all the teams going for 2 and with all the teams not taking chip shot field goals, 10-3 is fucking hard to come by now these days. 10-3 is not the automatic. 11-3 is more likely, or 8-3 or 8-0. But why must we trot that out there in a 10-3 baseball game? Who's thinking that? How come we don't say that when it's 3-0? Oh, we got a field goal game here in Texas on a 3. Right? It's 3-0 all the time in a baseball game. You don't fucking hear it then.
No, you don't. They don't say, the Texans and the Cowboys have exchanged field goals here.
Have exchanged field,
in the
right?
fifth
3:30. Here, exchange field goals. So that was just a little intro to my pet peeve. But the real pet peeve is now when every time in any game, every announcer, when you get down to that red zone area or you come to the decision making where whether or not a team's going to kick a field goal, it's 4th down, they're in field goal range. And now, remember, guys, it wasn't that long ago when a team went for it. It was like, whoa, and the Jets are going for it on 4th down. They're keeping the offense on the field. Well, now it's the complete opposite, where us as the viewers watching the game, the announcers so intelligently have to tell us, well, wait, like, they're going for a field goal here. What's going on? Like, why are they not going for it? They start giving me analytics. They start going into the whole thing now where I can't take it, guys. They're actually disappointed when field goal units come on now. It's gotten out of control. Just like everything's out of control these days. That was just a quick pet peeve I had where it's not just now the coaches. We've highlighted the coaches making these decisions. Now it's the announcers that are completely on board with it. And I'll be honest, as much as I love Peyton and Eli and the Manning cast, they do it. Peyton does it more than Eli. Peyton's much more vocal than Eli. But Peyton will be pissed off and downright disappointed when a team's not kicking a field goal. And I'm like, come on, Peyton, you're smarter than that. You know, it's annoying as hell, guys. It's just the announcers have gotten swept up by all this crap too. It's just crazy.
Cardone, the Eagles went for it from their own 27-yard line.
Yes. Yeah.
And after they made it, the proclamation was, well, the analytics are in their favor.
Yep.
How the fuck is that possible? Because if you don't make it, that's a sure score for the other team. You better be able to make
Miami.
it. I guess it's 100% of the time with the Eagles because they get to cheat on that play. But otherwise, that's bullshit. And Sirianni this week basically said, guys, for us, it's 1st and 9.
Yeah. Just, it's bullshit.
I hate Sirianni, but he's not wrong.
He's not?
He's not wrong. They can get 1 yard whenever they want it. So
yeah,
that's done. So
whether they
Cardone,
get it or not.
Yeah, exactly. They put the analytics stats up on the screen like regular stats now.
Yeah.
You know, when a team gets in that position, they're like, well, the analytics say you go for it here in 4th and less than 4. And my problem with that has always been the same thing. Analytics are analytics. You're not factoring in game situation, who you're playing, how good their defense is, how good your offense is. All that says is you should go for it based on stats of 100 different teams with 100 different talent levels playing 100 different talent levels of defense. You know, what if it doesn't even factor in if the other team has got like a 400-pound, middle defensive tackle that no one can move. It just
can't the analytics just be a suggestion? Does it have to be absolutely what you must do? It's sort of like when Michael Scott and Dwight Schrute were following the Google Maps or MapQuest and it told them to make a right turn and they fucking drove right into the lake. Like, just, it's a suggestion from some computer. It doesn't mean you have to do it. Well, the analytics said, when do you ever do you do that in your personal life? Every time something comes across, like, well, I'm going to have to do this because some credit card company just reached out and said, well, the analytics say I must, consolidate my debt because that's what I'm supposed to do.
I'll tell you what, Mike touched upon this. Here's what I have a problem with analytics is analytics take into account a big picture number. But you're playing a 17-game season that has a lot of small variables in it. It's like poker. So in poker, it might tell you to go all in on a certain hand, or you have a probability of winning a certain hand that's overwhelming. But you know what? If you're at a tournament and you lose that hand, you're out. And that's what happens with the NFL sometimes. If you lose that bet, or you go for it on 4th down and you don't make it, you lose the game. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if the percentages say it evens out over time. You don't have a whole lot of time in a 17-game season. You have 17 games. And if you make the wrong decision or you make a decision that backfires 4 out of those 17 games, chances are you're not making the playoffs because of coaching error.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Scott, the poker analogy is an awesome one, because if I have done this, if you read poker books that talk about using analytics in poker, it is very clear that they say, listen, this it doesn't mean you'll win the hand 51% of the time that you do this. What it means is over your lifetime, if you call every time in this situation, you will make money. You will be in the plus. You'll be in the positive if you do that. And it's the same way for baseball. Analytics belong in baseball. If you throw a certain guy a certain pitch throughout the course of the season, he is not going to have a good average against you. You know, that's it belongs there in a 162 game season. That's enough data where analytics makes sense. To Scott's point, 17 games is you're just getting the airplane off the ground, and if you fuck one of those up, you're done. You're done for that year. It's and the thing that pisses me off most about it is kind of what Cardone was going at there. I think was coaches would never think to do this before because it would cost them their job if they screwed it up. And now, not only does it not cost them their job, it might cost them their job if they don't do it.
Yeah.
How does the Chargers coach still have a job after all the
seriously, I mean, come on with that guy. Every week that guy's fucking something up. Every week.
He really is.
Take it.
But he's got an ardent fan that follows him.
Yeah.
The only one.
Charger girl.
Yeah. All one of them.
Who also doubles as Dolphin girl on the other days. She's not Charger girl.
Novak, pet peeve?
Yeah, so just to recap from last week's pet peeve, how many times have you guys seen that BK commercial now that I brought that up last week?
Oh God.
It lives right free in my head.
That's what
That was great. We had a sequence last week where we had the BK commercial, a Kelsey
Travis
commercial.
Kelce, a Taylor Swift sighting, like boom, 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 right in a row.
Awful.
My pet peeve is, and this is, I don't know if it's a pet peeve as much as it's more of a question because I don't have an answer for this. What constitutes when a player goes into concussion protocol? Like, when do you say, let's put him in that blue tent? Because I saw a hit on Christian McCaffrey that it was head to head. A, he didn't get a flag. B, he was woozy standing up. He didn't go into the blue tent. But yet I see in another play, someone goes down, barely hits the ground, and they're in the blue tent in the next play. And I also heard Tiki Barber on Monday, I listened to WFAN, said he thought that Brock Purdy had a concussion when he threw those interceptions at the end of that game. He knew it. So today it just came out that Brock Purdy has a concussion. He's in the protocol. So I don't understand how the NFL during the game decides you're going to the blue tent, you're fine, you're not, you are. Is there rules on this, or is it just a gut check? Is it what? My pet peeve is I'm frustrated with the concussion protocol. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no standard thing. It's always it just seems like seems like a good time to do it. It's not an important player. Throw him in the blue tent.
I have no idea.
All I know is that any Eagle that's ever had a concussion that I've known of plays the very next week. I've never known an Eagle to miss a game due to a concussion.
He plays late, comes back to the game. That goes back to Andy Reid. Scott, you're all over that because if
who's the last Eagle you can remember missing a game due to a concussion?
There's not one.
It's supposed to be an impartial observer. But miraculously, these impartial observers seem to let the star players stay in the game. No matter how much they're vomiting and looking through the side of their helmet on the sidelines. It's more, I mean, that's close to my pet peeve, so I'll stop. But
it's no different than the COVID year, which I've brought up before. The Broncos were playing like a 7th string wide receiver at quarterback one game, and they get to the playoffs. No one got COVID for like a month and a half during the playoffs.
Yeah.
Miraculously, the NFL was cured of COVID for a month and a half. So you can't tell me something is not going on there. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Guys, the more I see like the refereeing stuff, these kind of examples, the NFL is no better than the WWE. It's basically, I remember when Arian Foster a few years ago said that the NFL is scripted. He basically said, I didn't basically say it. He said the NFL is scripted. No one said, no, it's not. They just they just laughed at him. That's not a denial. That's just laughing at the guy. The more I see of the NFL, I can't say it's scripted, but it's a lot like the WWE.
Well,
mean-
that the ending of that Colt Brown game certainly makes you scratch your head. If anybody was watching that, I think that was. I don't know what the script is there, other than
Oh yeah,
Colts were not supposed to win
Yeah,
that game
it's-
for whatever reason.
it is WWE. It's
Next,
That-
Yeah.
next thing you
oh
know,
my
they're
God,
gonna.
the Colts are the Browns are up off the mat. How did that happen? The Colts are celebrating, walking around the ring.
That's what I was gonna
The
say.
Browns
Next thing
come
you
up
know,
behind 'em.
they're
Ah!
gonna show the blue tent and show a guy's hand outside the blue tent.
Yeah,
All of a sudden,
Right.
his fist is gonna pump and he's gonna come busting out of the tent. But you know what's funny about that Colts game is that we were joking about it when it happened, but then on NBC that night, not only did they not mention
Mm.
They don't
the
mention it.
calls, but they said that the Browns had an epic drive to win the game.
Epic.
An
Yeah.
epic,
Wow.
crucial drive.
yeah. It was the drive, 1986 Broncos drive. It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
The drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross.
I don't get it.
Mike, pet peeve?
Yeah, I got one, and I know you guys are probably when you set up your pet peeves this week, you're like, oh my God, everyone's gonna wail on officiating, so I'm gonna go away from it. I went into it. I steered into
Love
the
it.
storm with this one. But so the Cleveland Indy game we've talked about a lot, and that was just this week's example, right? And there were several other around the week, but that was the one this week that was so blatant. But I'll tell you this: the Indy coach was going bananas at the first of the calls, I think. And the referees went over to him and talked to him. And then that arrogant ass ref comes back on, turns his mic on, looks into the camera and goes, "The call stands. Illegal contact," was the words he says. Now, you can't challenge illegal contact to my knowledge. So there was nothing challenged. So what does it mean the call stands? He just did it to be an asshole. Just like just
By
to
the way,
rub
that
it in.
illegal
Right.
contact, again, a third down bailout.
Yeah, of course it was.
Oh, of course it was third down.
So that I just wanted to slip that in there. It does feed in my pet peeve. So starting this week, guys, I'm starting a campaign for an investigation, and it's not into corruption. I don't think anything is rigged. I don't think anything is scripted. My investigation is I want full transparency into how officials are instructed to call games. I think teams deserve to know that, every team. And maybe they do, but I think fans, media, we all need to know what these refs are told. That what is allowed and what isn't. When do special conditions apply? Clearly, officials use special conditions as part of how they call a game. You don't see defensive holding or illegal contact on 3rd and long. That's not one officiating. It's not one official. It's not one officiating crew doing that. That is across the league that crap happens. There's and it seems to be in the 4th quarter. There's some rule changes apparently that happen. So the other thing I want to know is, what are the points of emphasis? I want to know every one of them, because you always hear, like this year, right? They're talking about illegal downfield. That's a point of emphasis this year, right? I want to know all of them. What are the other points of emphasis? What are the ones that were points of emphasis in the past that have now been pulled back, right? And if they have points of emphasis, you also have, I mean, it just makes common sense. You have to assume there's other penalties where they've told the officials, don't call that as much. Like, that has to be blatant before we're going to call that one. But we want you catching every single illegal man downfield, right? So that has to be happening. At some point, there's penalties that get de-emphasized. I think we need to know that. That shouldn't be something just shared between the governing body and its officials. Every team needs to understand what these things are. And I don't think anyone's going to, the NFL is going to start being taken not seriously if they don't do some things like this. For me and thousands of other people, Scott will know this, and Cardone, I think, fits right into. I don't know what Novak's history here is. When Scott and I first met, I was as big a New York Knicks fan as a Giants fan. I mean, it was close. I loved the Knicks. I watched every game that was available to me. I poured over stats. I loved it, just like I do for football now. The Jordan rules killed the NBA. It killed it for me, I know, and I know it killed it for a lot of other people.
Killed it for me.
Yep.
Same.
And we
Yeah.
know that in the NBA, even going back into the 70s, people were allowed to travel a little bit. And maybe you were allowed to travel a little bit more if your name was a little bit more well known. But it became blatant in the Jordan era.
Yep.
These special rules for special players, it became blatant. And what's happening in the NFL right now is we are shifting to where these things are becoming blatant, where the star quarterbacks are getting more illegal hit on the quarterback calls, late hit calls. They happen more. I mean, that's data that's out there. These guys who have big names get that call more. That's Jordan rules. And in the NFL, it applies to entire teams and not just players, which I think is the way that the NBA went as well with that after a while. And it became, to Scott's point, this is why I was so quiet when he was talking about the WWE. It became a joke. It became literally almost rigged. I don't think the NFL is there yet, but they're on the same path as the NBA. You can't deny that. And just like the NFL does now. You remember Tim Donaghy? You guys remember the official
Oh yeah.
who was
Yeah,
actually
scandal.
Definitely.
fixing games?
Yes.
that got swept under the rug fast.
Yeah, it did.
The NBA didn't. They tried to hide data on his games. They tried to bury stuff because they knew you could go back and you could find specific games that were rigged if you looked hard enough. They wanted nothing to do with that. They buried that. They did. They have the same setup the NFL is getting to now, which is this gaslighting setup that don't look over there at what you actually see. Listen to what we're telling you.
Mhm.
And the NBA is might even be more advanced at it right now than the NFL is, because the NBA would have you believe that like the WNBA is a viable league. They lie right to your face about it. They would have you believe, if you listen to NBA announcers and the media who are the mouthpieces for the NBA, they will tell you right now that NBA has never been a more successful league than it is right now. It's at the peak of its existence. Everyone knows that's not true.
No.
I know I can name 15 people who back in the 80s and 90s loved this flippin' league and now can't stand it. And it's because of I'll tell you, it's the same path that the NFL is on right now. I was physically ill Sunday night from watching football games this weekend. And as Scott touched on, this isn't an NFL problem. It happens in college football.
Oh yeah.
Football made me sick this weekend, just thinking in my mind how many outcomes were changed by officials. There is the Cleveland Indy game. The winner of that game flip-flopped because of things officials said, or the calls officials made. And Scott's mentioned it before that, people always say officials don't determine games, players do. There's the latest example. The players did decide that game. The officials reversed the decision. I mean, that's, that's
Right.
That's just there. That's just what's happening. And I think people just don't even want to think of the concept. And I'm talking about media, especially. Well, media can't say anything because the NFL is so powerful. They will ruin you if you say something like that. Fans don't want to really admit it, and they say things like that. Well, players decide the games, officials don't. The only reason I can think of a fan would be that forward about that is because they just can't allow their mind to wrap around something like that being not decided by players. You know what I mean? They just can't let their mind go that far, because then all of a sudden they're basically wrestling fans. But we're headed there. We are headed there, and we've talked about it a lot in text when the game was on, and I was pretty close to turning in my fan card on Sunday, and every week it's just getting worse. Every single week it's just getting worse and worse.
Mike, I'll give you a good example. So, the Giants, we saw the week before when the Giants played the Bills and Darren Waller had that last play in the end zone, and obvious pass interference wasn't called. If you watch the Bills-Patriots game this week, the Patriots ran the same exact play. There was no pass interference, and the tight end caught the ball for a touchdown. Everyone celebrates the fact that the Patriots won that game, and everyone's just moved past the fact that the Giants lost that game to the Bills is accepted fact. And it's the calls and the non-calls that are deciding a lot of these games, and no one wants to just man up and admit it or say it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Great call, Mike.
It's getting
Yeah.
bad. It's going
really
from it's going from comical to disturbing in my mind. But why would I pour my heart and soul into a football team if they can't even dictate what's going to happen on the field?
Yeah.
Yep.
If they have less and less control over the outcome of the game.
Yeah, you want your team to control their destiny. And if your team fucks up, and we've been on both sides of this with the Giants. We've seen the Giants fucked up. We've seen them rise above. But when the Giants have fucked up, we have said as fans, the Giants have fucked up. We aren't making excuses for them. We aren't saying that they should have won a game that they shouldn't have won. The only time we say that is if there's official interference or anything that really tilts the scale. Otherwise, we're more than happy to say the Giants fucked up. And I'm sure Novak's the same way with the Jets.
Same thing.
You know?
Yeah.
Same thing. Our
Yep.
teams have done a lot of boneheaded things in the last decade to screw themselves.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. It's we had talked about it a couple weeks ago. I think I mentioned that I'm glad the Giants suck this year. Their games don't matter because I think our weight of talking about this officiating problem carries more weight. I'm not talking about any of the calls in the Giants game. I'm not talking about one. The worst call in that game was against the Redskins. So, I get it. I don't know what it is, but this isn't a Giants problem. This is an NFL problem. I promise everyone this is not sour grapes. I'll leave it with this. I mentioned this in the text thread too, is so the third and long bailout thing, like that everyone knows about that, right? Like we chuckle about it, but you hear other people talk about it. It's very noticeable that these penalties come 3rd and 12. We've talked about it for years, right? When is anyone in the media ever even brought that up? Have you
No.
ever heard anyone on any level within the media say, "Hey guys, did you ever notice that there sure are a lot of 3rd and 15 iffy calls in this league that extend offensive drives?"
Not once.
I
Never.
know why they can't say it. They're going to get fined if they
Sure.
bring that up, or they're going to get cut off by the NFL. Something's going to happen if they talk about it. But that's why I started this with, we need to start a campaign because this has got to come from the media asking those questions.
Yep.
If it's going to change, the media has to grow a pair of balls. To Cardone's point, they have to get that little meeting that they have and say, is it okay to talk about this week? Is this something we're going to talk about this
Is
week?
this okay? Yeah. Is this?
And it won't happen.
Do we have
They've
permission?
all got to
Yeah.
get together and say, are we going to question the 3rd and long bailouts this week? Like, is that something we can all agree to do? I think it has to happen to I'll bet you if it happened to the Chiefs a couple weeks in a row, you'd hear some chatter about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the only time we're ever going to hear anything is if it happens like it did in that Viking New Orleans playoff game, or if it happens in the Super Bowl. And it has to be blatant enough to basically impact the outcome of the game. And then people will rise up, and then it'll be forgotten the next year when they don't do dick about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we already have evidence of that.
Yeah.
Everyone went bananas. Media and everyone went nuts about the non-pass interference call. So for 1 year, the NFL said, okay, everyone back off. We're going to fix this. We're going to make pass interference reviewable. 1 year, everyone shut up about it. They rescinded it. They pulled it back. We're right back to where we were today when that play in the same climate that play happened in.
Oh yeah. And I think part of that too, and I don't know if Mike, you brought this up or if I saw this somewhere else, it still stems from the fact that you have old fucking people trying to keep up with young guys on the field, and they can't do it. And so what drives me more nuts than anything else, and we saw this in the Giants game the past week with Saquon Barkley a couple times, the spotting of the balls. For some reason, they come in. Sometimes it's a yard or 2 yards behind where the play is, and that impacts it. If it's 3rd and 1, and you're like 3rd in inches, really, and the guy's marking it 3rd and 2.5, that's a big fucking difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
they're spotting it 2 yards short because they were 7 yards behind the play.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the best they could see of it. You know, how about college players that don't make the NFL as officials? They know the rules. They're in shape.
I'm all for it. I'm all for getting younger blood in there, because you can't tell me. I don't care. The most fit 70-year-old guy is not able to keep up with these players.
No.
He could have sharp eyesight, and his fucking tendons are still 30 years older than what they should be.
Yep.
So my pet peeve is kind of going in that same realm. And you know, one of the things I rail about with the officiating is just the complexity of everything. Just make everything simple. Make it simple. Call things at the point of attack. I saw videos this week of like a Miami guy running in and getting like basically choked as he's running through the line of scrimmage at the point of attack. And that still wasn't called a hold. If it's at the point of attack, if it materially impacts a play, call it. So what I did this week is I went and I looked at the definition of holding, offensive holding. And when I do that, it's interesting, some of the wording there. So it says it's holding if a blocker materially restricts the opponent, which is a very broad statement.
Materially?
Materially restricts. Now, it is a foul whether or not the hands are inside or outside the frame of the body, which I've heard from people. If it's inside the frame, it's okay. No, it's a foul if the hands are within the frame or outside the frame. If you grab or tackle the opponent, it's a foul. If you hook, jerk, twist, or turn them, it's a foul. If you pull them to the ground, it's a foul. Now, oddly enough, if the defensive player does a rip move, all holdings let go. If a defensive player does a rip technique, they are instructed to let that go. But here's the thing that lets a lot of this off the hook. The final part of the rule states, if the official has not seen the entire action of holding, it shall not and will not be called.
I turned away. I didn't see the end. No
So-
call.
Yeah.
So that's the official's bailout.
That's the official's ballot.
Yes.
But here's my biggest problem here is you have so many judgments that are happening. Why even have this wording in the rule book? Just say if someone at the point of attack is materially impacted from making a play, throw a flag. If it happens on the defensive end that's on the opposite side of the field, let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And we make things so freaking complicated rather than just make it easy. And I've been beating this drum for a while. And the more I say this in my head, the more I realize I don't think the NFL gives a shit. They don't want it to be easy. They want there to be this subjectiveness that fans like us are bantering about.
Yep.
That the talking heads are bantering about.
Yep.
Because it allows them, I don't want to say to manipulate, but to have contests that end up like the Eagles-Dolphins game did or the Browns-Colts game does, where it's not so much now on the officials, it's on us. You know, we're just making shit up.
Yeah, like I've said from the beginning, and because immediately when you start talking about officials, people say, "Oh, right. The games are rigged," and they shut you down. I want to be very clear to everyone. I don't think games are rigged. I think games are Scott. You pulled back from saying it. I'll say it. I think games are manipulated to pump up the offense and to try to make the finish exciting, if at all possible.
Mhm.
That's what I think.
Absolutely.
And I think your point's a great one, and it kind of does dovetail right into mine, which is it's not good enough to just read the rule book. The NFL rule book is worthless because we have all these side rules that change from year to year. These things are emphasized. These things aren't. Like Scott mentioned, the rule book specifically says inside or outside doesn't matter. That's holding. The NFL is not officiated that way. That is not. We've all heard announcers for 2 decades at least telling us it's okay to hold if you're inside the frame. So yeah, that's why it's the same thing I'm calling for. I want full transparency. I want either, like to Scott said, rewrite the rule book so that it's current to today and that it's not as complex and leaves much less interpretation up to the officials.
I want to
Either-
know how.
Maybe-
I want to know how you block a guy without hooking, jerking, twisting, or turning them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah,
Maybe
it
we
sounds
need-
No.
that rule book was written when defensive linemen weren't very good. I think that's the problem.
Exactly.
Maybe we need to get the officials training camp on Hard Knocks so we can get the inside scoop on this shit.
Love it.
No teams want to do it anymore. We just do the officials. It's a good idea.
Exactly.
So we got a bunch of questions this week. My buddy Mike asked if we